My name is Brian Amcrowd. I'm the Executive Director of the Elora and Alvin Siegel Lifelong Learning Program here at Case Western Reserve, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our 2017 Northeast Ohio Public Policy Series. Tonight's program is titled The Proposed Merger of Cleveland and East Cleveland. How could this happen? Should it? Before we begin, I want to recognize and thank a few organizations who are especially instrumental in making this year's Public Policy Series possible. Our program partners for 2017 include the Siegel Lifelong Learning Program at Case Western Reserve, the League of Women Voters, Cleveland.com, the Solon Community Center, Cuyahoga County Public Library, Cleveland Heights University Heights Public Library, and the Lakewood Public Library. We are grateful to our corporate sponsor, First Interstate Properties Limited, for supporting the series. Just a word that the generous support of our philanthropic entities, whether through corporate sponsorship or personal contributions, is critical to enable us to offer public programming of this sort and to be able to record it and make it available for folks later on. So I just want to remind everyone about our next public policy session. We did have a bunch of flyers outside, but I think most of them have been picked up. And we also have our lifelong learning catalog outside, and the full public policy series for the spring is in that catalog. February's session is titled, Will Cleveland's East Side Gentrify? Can it be done equitably? This will be held on February 21st at the Cleveland Heights University Heights Public Library main branch, and the moderator for that session will be Steve Litt. Tonight, during the question and answer period, please write out your questions on note cards, then hold them up, and they will be collected and brought to the panel. If you need a note card or a pencil, please raise your hand, and we'll make sure that one gets to you. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for tonight, Nick Castele, and Nick will introduce the panelists. Nick Castele is a reporter-producer with Ideastream, including public radio and TV stations 90.3 WCPN and WVIZ PBS. He's also heard frequently on the NPR network. He covers state and regional politics and governance from here on the Lake Erie shore. Please join me in welcoming Nick Castele.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for taking part in this conversation. I invite you right now to start thinking about what questions you want to ask, and the note cards will be passed around with pencils so you can write down the questions that you want to put to our panelists. Let me introduce them quickly. We've got Councilman Kelley from Ward 13 in Cleveland. He's the council president of Cleveland City Council. Nathaniel Martin is a councilman at large in the city of East Cleveland, and Jeffrey Johnson is councilman from Ward 10 in the city of Cleveland, also, as it happens, a candidate for mayor of that city. I want to give you, just very briefly here, a quick overview of East Cleveland and its finances, how we got to this point. East Cleveland, for about 17 years, was in a state of fiscal emergency from the 1980s until 2006. In 2006, the city's fiscal emergency status was lifted, and for a couple years, it was operating without that status. In 2012, it went back into fiscal emergency. State audits from the time cite the city for essentially spending more than its means as income tax revenue and other kinds of revenue were declining. 5 years later, the city has made cuts to its budget. It's laid off workers. It is still under the watch of state auditors, and it is still in a state of fiscal emergency. The previous mayor, Gary Norton, had proposed this idea of annexation, of beginning the political process of having the city of Cleveland consider annexing the city of East Cleveland and putting that question to the voters in East Cleveland. He was then recalled at the end of last year. He lost his recall vote. We now have new leadership in the city, and now the question of what will happen to this annexation procedure, I'm hoping to find out too, because I'm not sure of the answer either. And so, Nathaniel Martin, I wanted to throw the first question to you. This idea of annexation, of debating it, of putting it to potentially a vote someday, is it dead? Is it done?
No, it's not. I can tell you with the question of annexation is a question that we will discuss between Kevin and Jeff. I can say from the people I talk to, my constituents, they are opposed to any type of merger or annexation, period. But the economics may change that. Right now, what I need to share with you is that, I guess 6 or 7 years ago, before Huron Hospital closed, there was a agreement with the mayor and Cleveland Clinic, and we got $20 million. Prior to that, we were getting about $1 million a year from the Cleveland Clinic in tax revenue, which was paramount, and the reason why we're in the situation we're in right now. $12 million of the $20 million went to tear down Huron Hospital. The $8 million came to the city of East Cleveland, and we still haven't figured out how that was spent. I don't want to get personal, I want to point the finger, but there's been some mismanagement. If we would have managed that money like we should, not hired people that we should not have hired, and the legislative body doesn't do that, we wouldn't have this question today.
And so as you're looking to the present now and what East Cleveland faces today and over the next couple months and years, do you think that this question of annexation is one that's still going to be on the table, or do you think the city of East Cleveland wants to forge its own path and be independent and try to make it on its own?
We would like to be independent, but for me to say that that's the way it's going to be at the present time, no. We're currently facing a $1.5 to $2 million deficit. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we cut a $5 million deficit, almost $6 million deficit, to $2.4 million. That is manageable. What I would like for us to do, and what I've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years, because I've had 3 forums on this, I had even attended a forum that Jeff Johnson had in his ward, is that we need help in terms of the state stepping in, University Circle Incorporated stepping in, and other corporate entities stepping in to help us. $2.4 million is not a lot of money. It's not like Detroit in the billions. So we're asking for help. We're asking for collaboration. We're asking for cooperation. We're asking for them to sit down at the table. To sit down at the table to help us. That's what we're asking. We don't want to be taken over. One of the reasons why the recall, and you need to hear this whether you were receptive to it or not, is that people will oppose our citizens, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them are opposed to annexation and merger. We feel that with our blight and with the issues that we face, we're in a great location. It's a gym. You can get on the Rapid at Superior or Windermere and go anywhere in the country. We have the health land that runs every six minutes at peak times. We have valuable land. We want to collaborate and cooperate with these corporate entities to help us.
So I want to put this next question then to Kevin Kelley, and I think this is a good segue to it. As you're looking at some of the outside entities that might be interested in helping East Cleveland or participating in some way in this process, the city of Cleveland, of course, is a big player. Do you think, from your perspective, the city of Cleveland is still interested in pursuing this question of annexation, or would you look at some other option?
Perhaps, but from the very beginning, my position on this has been that this has to be an East Cleveland decision first. This wasn't going to be Cleveland doing any kind of takeover or anything of that nature. If the people of East Cleveland made the decision that we would like to enter into this type of arrangements, then I'm very open to that, and I think there's a lot of exciting possibilities. I agree with all the people of East Cleveland. I'm going to single you out because I think everybody believes this, that East Cleveland, despite what you read about it, there's a tremendous amount of great opportunity there. I think it's a gem in many ways. My daughter runs cross country, and they run at Forest Hills Park. The real estate's beautiful. The opportunities by University Circle. There's great opportunities there, but it has to be an East Cleveland decision first. When the petitions were first circulated and came to us, that was to me, that was a sign that it was moving in that direction. Now, those petitions, without going through the details, got hung up in court, and then there was an ordinance that was brought to us. So I, at that point, started becoming very interested in the possibilities and perhaps working out a path forward. The recent recall of the mayor and the council president, it was a signal. As the councilman said, that was largely based on this notion of annexation and whether people wanted it. But to me, it was a sign that the people of East Cleveland at this point don't seem to want to have that conversation yet. And that doesn't mean it's off the table. It means that in 2017 right now, that conversation is not ready to be had in other circumstances it might have been.
For Councilman Jeff Johnson, I wanted to ask you, as you talk with people in your ward, Glenville, of course, is neighboring East Cleveland. Are there, what do you hear from people about whether they would be open to this idea of bringing in this city where their neighbors live into the Cleveland fold?
First of all, thank you for including me on this panel, and thanks for everyone who came out. I really have to preface my statement with the understanding that my ward is the #1 ward that has the most connections in East Cleveland than any other ward. I hit it off of Euclid, near Ivanhoe. I hit it over there by Woodworth and Hayden. I hit it over there by 128th Street, Paxton area. I hit it. And so my folks have mixed feelings from the standpoint that I receive the concerns of those who live near the border, the most recent being the dump that was authorized by the leadership, whether it was the mayor and who else.
And just to clarify, as a point of information for people who might not be familiar, that dump, this was a piece of city-owned land owned by the city of East Cleveland. In 2014, it was sold off as part of the city's financial recovery plan for $125,000. What moved in was a company that called itself a recycling company. It was disposing of the refuse from demolished vacant houses in this spot. The pile piled higher and higher, essentially right next to people's backyards. The EPA shut it down recently, saying that they did not think that those things were being disposed of at all, but in fact were just being left in a giant pile. Sorry, you can continue.
No, you did that very well. Like, you just had a news story. So the interest of East Cleveland is beyond East Cleveland. And that just like when you live next to a person, a house, and that person has trouble, whatever reason, whether it's purposeful or whether it's based on a lack of income, that the house begins to deteriorate, it impacts you. And so this is our neighbor, and what's happening over there impacts Cleveland, but particularly impacts my ward. So I start there, that this is not some intellectual discussion that I'm just sitting in my living room. It is the difference between my ward in East Cleveland, the condition of the street versus my street. It's bad enough in Cleveland, let alone to have the additional issues. And then of course the question of security, the fact that our officers, though it may be the same street, like Woodworth, are not supposed to help the folks over there. So there is an intimate relationship between the northeast part of Cleveland and East Cleveland. Therefore, those who live on the west side don't feel it. They intellectualize it. And what happens in most of Cleveland, and in a good part of my ward, is that don't even think about it. We got enough problems, is what I hear a lot. But the people a lot of folks who live in my area get it because they are impacted. And it's like, something has to be done. My property values are impacted by this. Now that's one argument. And then the other argument just deals with, if we don't do something, what will happen? Cleveland Heights has no interest, unless you just give them the park on the hill. That's pretty much all they want, maybe the housing over there, Mount Vernon and all that. But don't even think about, Cleveland Heights is not interested down the hill. So I start with the fact that I have a community that believes that there needs to be some assistance, something to help East Cleveland. But they don't want us to just take it over and use our general fund to fix it. And then we can discuss what those other options are, but that's the answer to your
For Councilman Nathaniel Martin, you know, East Cleveland is seeing, or has been seeing over a number of years, its revenues declining. Income tax revenue in particular from 15 years ago until today has fallen significantly. I'm wondering, as you're looking forward to how does East Cleveland continue to provide services to its residents with basically the hand that you're being dealt right now, how do you think the city can get more revenue so that it can keep paying for the services that you're obligated to deliver?
Well, currently, we have about 1,500 vacant homes. We have great housing stock. Matter of fact, the urban studies a few years ago said we have some of the best housing stock in the country. Those houses need to be renovated or rehabbed for people can move in them so they can pay taxes. That's one thing. We need business to move in. Currently, we had Vila, this I think a $2-3 million project opened up a month ago.
Was that the shoe store?
The shoe store, and there's another store. Papa John's, which may be in some people's minds small. Pizza Hut, etc. Small businesses are moving in. But we need a stronger tax base. What has happened to us over the last 20 years is our tax base has been diminished. And with the vacant homes sitting there, we're not getting any revenue from. I favored giving the houses away for $1, let people move in so people eventually can fix them up and pay taxes, and a program to support that. That's one step in the right direction. But the fact that we're in a great location, you always hear about location, location, location. Business development needs to move in, but right now they're reluctant. They're reluctant because of division within our legislative, within our government, and all these negative things you hear. We have good people in East Cleveland who care. We have people that have been in these houses for 40, 50 years. We have an area in East Cleveland that you would think wasn't East Cleveland, but it's great. Jeff mentioned up off Lee Road, Mount Vernon, that area has always been solid. We have a park. So we need that kind of business, economic development. We need houses fixed up. That can be done. And that's the type of conversation I would like to have with Chris Ronayne and corporate interests, et cetera. The French group, for an example, connected with University Circle Incorporated. At Lakeview and Euclid, they built a project there for $2 or $3 million. It's for the people that live in University Circle, and they haven't had a problem there. It's going real well. It's filled up, but you have to be a University Circle employee, okay? So there's hope there if we can do those kinds of things. What I'm trepidatious about is the fact that we haven't sat down with the council in Cleveland and the council in East Cleveland. We haven't sat down. We haven't got that far. We have, East Cleveland, picked our 3 commissioners. One is here sitting in the audience, Chris Glassburn, and we picked 2 others to see how can we agree. There's got to be some areas where we can agree, where we can work toward. But we're kind of on talk about being taken over and gentrified or whatever term you want to use. That's where the reluctance is, okay?
And I want to get to that question of development and gentrification in a second, but one party we have not talked about yet is the state of Ohio. And for Councilman Kelley, I wondered, what role do you think the state should be playing in this discussion as you're looking at what do we do about these vacant houses in East Cleveland? What do you do about fixing up some of the infrastructure that's not being maintained? What should the state be doing?
Well, any solution is going to have to involve the state. And of all the assistance they can provide, the most important is going to be financial. If this were to move forward, you know, the city of Cleveland would not be able to put itself at a financial disadvantage. So we would need help with capital, the capital repairs, infrastructure repairs, and at least some startup or some bridge money so that we can provide services during the period if we were to move in that direction. I don't know if this is true. The state auditor has suggested that if you get over that hump of these great expenses, the income taxes that are generated and property taxes could support itself because Cleveland already has the overhead built in with its service fleets. I don't know if that's true. That theory hasn't been tested, but that'd be just a starter.
Well, I wondered on that same point, though, how do you go about trying to get the state to unleash some more money to Cleveland and East Cleveland? We've got the budget process just beginning, but of course the state auditor, Dave Yost, has said he would like to see fewer local governments in Ohio. And so it seems like there's also interest in trying to reduce the number of governments we've got around here.
Ultimately, it would be the General Assembly would have to authorize the funding, and it's going to be, you know, a substantial number, and it's not easy to do. The auditor began with a figure of 10 million. I'm not positive what that was based on, but that's not an easy sell in Columbus today. They don't like us in Cuyahoga County too much.
I was going to say, when Cleveland Democrats pick up the phone, do they answer in Columbus?
It depends on who you call, but the Democrats will, but they can't really do anything. They don't have a lot of authority to, get money out. So this is what the state does. The short answer is we just don't know. What would they have to be involved? Absolutely. It would have to be a big number, and it would have to be a lot of involvement. But we don't know, A, what the number is, what that mechanism would look like, because our conversations haven't gotten that far yet.
Sure, yeah, Jeff Johnson, please go ahead.
When Cleveland really wants something, and when the call goes out to the business community that it really wants something, it gets it from the state. Whether it's Opportunity Corridor, the $100 million mile project, whether it is the association with raising money for putting our 2 turnpike bridges up, whether it is to go down there and get a law passed to stop voters from voting on $15 an hour minimum wage. No matter if we wanted it, it happens, but there's a key factor that's always part of this, is that it has to be in the interest of the business community, because they're the ones who have the relationship with Kasich and Republicans. Now, Mayor Jackson has a fair relationship with them as well. What I think has to happen is that we do not necessarily have to wait for a petition for Cleveland and East Cleveland to have a conversation about the future of East Cleveland. The petition starts the process for one option, and that is annexation. We did not start the process toward annexation. It was the previous mayor, plus one signature doesn't start the annexation, by the way. Norton's signature did not start the annexation process. I just want y'all to remember this. This ain't about just Norton. And that he actually had a petition and that people who are residents of East Cleveland signed that triggered all of this. Now, they also made a judgment on his leadership, and he got recalled. But nevertheless, the point is that there is a discussion and a debate about the future of East Cleveland that even its residents. Now, I know East Cleveland residents, and I've heard them look at me like, don't even think about touch, like I'm the one leading this or something. Then I have those who say, I don't know what's going on at City Hall. I don't know what's going on with my future. I have a business. I need, something got to happen.
I want to put that question to you that you were saying, well, for Jeff Johnson, just for 1 second, when you said when the business community wants something, they're able to find a way to get it. I wonder, how do you then go to the business community in Cleveland or throughout the state and make the case to them that aid for East Cleveland is worth their investment or is something that they should do?
Well, first of all, the best option is for a city, in my opinion, first and foremost, the city should stay a city. That's the best option. So the question is, what is in the interest of the business community of Cleveland for East Cleveland as a charter city to exist? The first thing coming to your mind is University Circle. If it wasn't for University Circle, they could care less. So how do you take advantage of proximity, because they basically have run out of room and they're building on top of each other in University Circle. So all they can do is go east. So how can you create a partnership that doesn't create this takeover that many of these Clevelanders fear, this gentrification issue? At the same time, how can the business community benefit? We absolutely cannot save East Cleveland, whether as a charter city or a annexed part of City of Cleveland without, this is, Kevin's correct, without state money, or Fed, but now that we got, what's his name in there, I don't even think the Feds are in the mix. I was hoping behind hope if Hillary was in there, we might have had a shot at some Fed money, but they need money no matter what. They need to be able to go in there with infrastructure repairs quickly, and then also work with the stakeholders such as City of Cleveland and deal with this issue of the governance. You know, because if we fixed everything and the governance still is at war, then you're going to have nobody moving in. You still got the high crime. And so the investments of multi-million dollars that we could pull will also not bring it back.
Well, Nathaniel Martin, I want to put this question to you about development in East Cleveland.
To the state issue right quick.
Sure. I mean, do you have an argument that you would make to the state then about why they should put money to East Cleveland?
I need to share with you and the public that we reached out to the state, sent a letter. I sent the letter. Spoke with the Tim King, connected with the state. We had our state rep to help us in the process, Kent Smith, about the local government fund, which all the municipalities, 59 in Cuyahoga County, are complaining about getting cut. So we asked, at that time when the letter was sent out, when I sent the letter out, there was a $1 billion rainy day fund. Okay, we followed up about a year later, now it's $2 billion and growing. Now, Kasich talks about the budget cuts and all like that. So we said, and I said to Tim, I said, who has a rainy day situation but East Cleveland? Okay, help us. Ken Smith went beyond. He worked with
this is the
Kevin,
state representative who represents that area.
State Representative Ken Smith, but like Kelley said, the General Assembly has to act. He tried to get them to do something in the budget, but they would not. Okay, now Yotes threw out $10 million, which is a drop in the bucket. We need more than that, but it would have been a start. But he was trying to badger us from the standpoint of, well, if you do this, maybe you get your $10 million. Well, you don't work that way. Well, let's sit down and see what we can work out. That's the direction. That's what we need from the state to step in and help us. I asked Tim Keene and them when I followed up. I said we need some help. And Ken Smith stepped in, state rep, I think the 8th district. He went beyond the call of duty. He's really the only one that's really tried to do something in terms of connecting the General Assembly to help us in this situation. We haven't got anything but a lot of verbiage at this point. I needed to say that. We reached out because now, isn't it a paradox for the state, for Yost to say, we'll give you $10 million if you annex with Cleveland, but they don't want to do nothing after if we don't do that? That's crazy. And we're not going for that.
I want to bring in one question from our audience here for Councilman Kevin Kelley. This question is, what value would merging with East Cleveland bring to Cleveland? What would be in it for Cleveland?
I'm going to answer that question with a couple assumptions. That Councilman Martin in East Cleveland have made a decision that they wanted, because ultimately, we're like 25 steps ahead of ourselves. We're talking about going to the state or doing anything else until the people of East Cleveland decide that this is what they want, because ultimately they have to vote on this. They have to vote to say this is what we want. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. What do I see is the value of Cleveland? Of East Cleveland, thank you, Jeff. What is a city other than people and places? And in East Cleveland, you've got beautiful places and beautiful people, and can we, we have, similar interests, and, can we partner together? Can we work together to solve a problem? And can we set an example for the region? Those are all valuable things to the city of Cleveland. We've talked about it before. The park is beautiful. The real estate around the park is beautiful. The opportunities around University Circle, I think, are numerous. And I think it's only, if you think of that, those things can merge, together. You can bring those together, and it can really reach its potential. And it would be fantastic to have that gem as a part of Cleveland if we got to the point where East Cleveland decided that was the direction that they wanted to go. But there's those that say that, why is Cleveland taking over this when you've got your own problems? Why are you doing this? First of all, we're not until such a time. But if we did start to think about it, if we did start being creative about what is it how could Cleveland as a community benefit from this partnership, I think there's tremendous benefit. There's tremendous upside if we want to go in that direction.
I want to ask you the next question here, too. It's kind of the flip side of the question I had just asked. And I'm just reading from the card here. It says, given Cleveland's financial status, particularly the lack of investment in many of its East Side neighborhoods, would Cleveland actually invest and address the infrastructural needs? And I imagine they mean of East Cleveland.
I imagine so, and the infrastructural needs are going to be that thing that if we ever got to a point where we were in a position to approach the state, that would have to be dealt with on the front end. We have every city, it's not just Cleveland, infrastructure is expensive, it's aging, and there's no cheap, easy fix. If ever we got to this point where, Councilman Martin and his colleagues and the people of East Cleveland wanted to do this, we would have to, and we would because it's a value we share, every person would be treated the same. Every street would have to be treated the same. They would have to be a part of the community. So yes, we would have to invest in East Cleveland at the same rate that we do in the city of Cleveland.
For Nathaniel Martin, I want to ask you again, you had mentioned before about the possibility of University Circle expanding down Euclid Avenue. If you talk with folks in East Cleveland about what they think is happening in the future, this is something that often comes up. The building of housing and investment in development along there. Is that something that you as a councilman would welcome in East Cleveland? And how do you make sure that kind of development happens to the benefit of low-income folks in East Cleveland who live there right now? Because that's definitely a concern that I've heard from people about the possibility of development.
I welcome it, and I'm bullish about it. It's what needs to take place. And our concern is, if you are familiar with the Harlem situation, they gentrified the situation and they moved in and priced everybody out. Right. We're not going to let that happen in East Cleveland. That's why if you're at the table, you're not left off the menu. So we're saying, come to the table and see where we can agree on things and how we can work together. University Circle is the hope. I mean, they've done magnificent things right in this area. They built the one facility at Lakeview and Euclid, and it's no problem. And there's a couple of other businesses connected with this area around Case 2 that's opening up. So, but we haven't had this discussion. Again, I have to go back to the fact that Jeff Johnson, Kevin Kelley, good council people, and the entire council of Cleveland, we haven't sit down to talk about it. I don't even know if the former mayor, Gary Norton, and Frank Jackson have discussed this, but we haven't had that. The only action that's taking place toward any type of merger conversation is that East Cleveland chose 3 commissioners to get this process going. Ultimately, I've had 3 forums on it. One at the library, one at Candlewood, on this whole process. We had Norm Cromhost, an expert. We had attorney Tony Coyne. We had Ed Jerks, people that know about this, and ultimately what it boiled down to was that after all is said and done, it boils down to a vote. As you said, Nick Castele, it's going to be whether the East Cleveland people vote to have it done and the Cleveland people vote to have it done. But what people tell me in the street people say, well, you might get some support, but the people on the west side don't want to have anything to do with the people in East Cleveland. It ain't going anywhere, okay? But the people I talk to are real concerned that if this goes forward, they will come in, they will build, but everything goes sky high and their price to people, the indigenous people who've been there for years will be priced out. And we don't want that to happen. We want to work with people.
Well, I want to put that same question to Jeff Johnson, and I want to ask you if you could try to imagine for us here, if you're thinking about development along Euclid Avenue, what would that development look like that would bring value to East Cleveland, but also be something that would benefit folks who live there in the city right now, particularly people who don't have very much money or means to speak of?
I think there's just a number of steps before you actually openly encourage the expansion of the type of development that is in University Circle. There absolutely has to be a partnership between the city of Cleveland and East Cleveland. I don't believe that Cleveland City Hall has done what it needs to do to proactively get involved with sitting down with the leadership of East Cleveland and talking about their western border. There's always this risk, and only in my opinion, when there's a partnership between Cleveland and East Cleveland, I'm not talking annexation, but right now partnership, then we can assist as needed to determine what type of agreed upon development occurs. If you don't watch out, you'll get the same development that's going on in University Circle.
That's right.
And the positive of that is that it is a tax base. If you charge for residents who live in your ward, in your city, then that development brings bodies into the city. But at the same time, again, there's only going to be certain points in which they're going to go because they don't want to entrust their investment with the present governance issue. And let's not forget that this is a majority black community as well, and there's some discomfort there.
Discomfort, you mean with what? With the idea?
With the investors investing in East Cleveland. University Circle investments is not the same as investing in East Cleveland. It's just not the same. So I just want you to understand, as they creep down Euclid, you've got to be able to manage development so that it is, so maybe you do moderate income housing. Because by allowing folks to have this type of land, you cut deals to provide certain types of development. You leverage that money to say, okay, we need small business loans for the existing businesses that are on Euclid right now that still remain. If you're going to be on our western boundaries, then you have to put into a development fund that helps us in central or eastern part of East Cleveland. You have to have managed development. And I really don't believe East Cleveland by itself has the power or the persuasion to do it by itself. No. I think that it needs a true partnership with Cleveland to be able to say, yes, you will not develop on the western part of East Cleveland without putting into the development fund if you want to continue to make money in Cleveland. But that requires City Hall to say, we will partner. Now, I believe that's the way to go. But the present leadership, obviously Mayor Jackson has really been silent on this. We have not initiated anything. And we're only reacting because you gave us a petition. And we're going to hold on that petition. We ain't really going to move on that petition unless the state steps forward with more than $10 million.
So I got another question.
Kevin knows, and I agree with the fact that we just can't move ahead without a partnership that's going to bring money into it.
I got another question here from our audience, and I want to put it to Nathaniel Martin and Councilman Kelley here. The question is, empty houses in East Cleveland, where are the property owners, and why have they not been made to keep them up? For Councilman Nathaniel Martin, you're certainly familiar with this problem. Where are the owners of those empty, vacant, abandoned houses?
Well, the owners are somewhere. Some of them, when I talk to the administration, some in California, some in Florida, et cetera, but we don't have the resources to track them down, and that's been the problem. I say, well, people own these properties, we board them up, we have to pay to board them up, I can go on and on and on, but we have not had the resources to really track these people down, and the banks are involved in this too, and we haven't done well with that. All we've heard, and I say this with humility because I'm a humble person, the last 2-3 years is merger and annexation that would be the answer to our issue, and that's become very contentious with a lot of people in East Cleveland. And there's some people in East Cleveland, to be fair, that want this to take place. My question, and I don't want to flip this on the question, is what I want to find out here is, I agree that there has to be a partnership, but how do we both benefit? That's the direction that I want to go into. How does Cleveland benefit with our 17,000 people and the blight that we have, and how does East Cleveland benefit in terms of economic development, working collaboratively, jointly in a partnership to solve this? We have to eventually, hopefully, get to the table to see how we can work this out. There are developers who want to develop the land. We say the University Circle Incorporated, a great operation, is landlocked. Who has the land? We do. So work with us. We're willing to work with them. This is common sense. You don't have to be a scientists to figure this out. We want to work with people. We want to collaborate. Jeff said partnership. We want all of that, but we haven't got that far. But we will not be taken over. I have to say that.
Councilman Kevin Kelley, I want to put the same question about vacant and abandoned properties to you. I know you may not be familiar specifically with East Cleveland cases, but this problem doesn't stop at the East Cleveland line. What can the city of Cleveland or our region do about these homes that are owned by people who live in Florida, live out of town, and are just never going to take care of their properties?
Right, and this is a byproduct of the Great Recession that is with us every day. A lot of the homes were bank walkaways, or they were bundled and sold as securities, and people walked away from them and left them with municipalities. And this is really a tremendous burden on cities. First and foremost, you've got this empty shell of a house, and that hurts property values, and it increases crime, and it just really detracts from the city. But cities we're not in the property management business, but we've had to become property managers for a lot of these vacant abandoned houses. We need to figure out which of them need to come down, and we need to figure out which of them is there a market to rehab and put them into productive use. The problem is both of those solutions are expensive. We've done what we could. We are doing what we can through our land bank, the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. Cuyahoga County has made funds available for demolition. There's working through Thriving Communities Institute. There's a host, and there's a host of programs for renovation. But we have to. It's got to be a block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood approach, and it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be cheap. But people need to step up, because this is the problem that nobody's going to solve for us. The people that should solve for us. They don't live in Cleveland or East Cleveland. They are not here. They've walked away, and quite frankly, talked about the resource to go get them. In some ways, you could say Cleveland has more resources through our housing court. However, and even with the God bless Ray Pianca's soul. It was not worth even though you've got the resource, you can put liens, you can put judgments, but there wasn't enough value in these houses to make it worth the court's time to track them down and bring them here, because a lot of these houses were put into shell corporations, LLCs, and the owners have shielded themselves for liability. By the time you get to the owner and get any real money, it just wasn't going to happen. So this is a big, expensive problem that's before us, and we have to solve it ourselves, because nobody's going to do it for us.
I got a question here from the audience. I'm going to put this to Councilman Jeff Johnson. I understand East Cleveland has an aging population, which is one of the reasons for diminished revenue. What could East Cleveland do right now to attack young professionals? I imagine that means to bring them in. Attract. I'm sorry. different meaning. To attract young professionals.
That was a novel approach.
Yeah.
The question itself is problematic for me, because the core of this issue, how do you attract professionals? How do you attract? You gotta have something to attract them with. And we gotta talk about who are we talking about. The young professionals that have taken root in downtown Cleveland and who have taken root at University Circle or Tremont or Ohio City, Detroit Shoreway are usually, and I'm glad they're in Cleveland, usually are white professional people, the vast majority of them. So why would they come to East Cleveland? Well, it has to be connected to, number one, if any shot, again, they have to be connected to the western part of your area, because they have to be connected to an interest in how they want to spend their money. And of course, University Circle has been that attraction. But you guys, the core question ultimately is this, in my opinion. There is a tension right now that has to be just alleviated. And then the people are like drawing sides. Let me explain to those in East Cleveland, I don't want your city. I don't want your city, but I want the city to work so it stops for a couple of reasons. Number one, so you can stop losing population like we're losing in Cleveland. And number two, because I care about the folks over in East Cleveland. Many of them are my folks I know. I grew up in Collinwood and Glenville, so I know a lot of East Clevelanders. But there's this tension here. And Nate has said it a couple times. We will not be taken over. There is not a boogeyman out there licking their lips to take over East Cleveland. There is some folks who want part of your land to make money, don't get me, but they don't want the city. So Chris don't want the city. Chris wants, come on man, all right? Chris wants, I agree, Chris wants Euclid. All right, they don't want the city, they want Euclid. So Chris is not downtown in 601 Lakeside conspiring in the corner with us trying to figure out, let's take over East Cleveland so I can get, no, that's not how, because first of all, I would not be party to regentrification of the western part of East Cleveland. It's not going to happen. Now, I don't know about Frank Jackson, because I obviously I feel he need to go, I wouldn't be running against him. But that's another deal. But the point I'm making is, I think we have failed to treat East Cleveland like the brother city or the sister city that it is. There is a tension. And the tension simply says is this: they're not going to listen to you. I don't care if Kent Smith turns blue in his face. The folks in Columbus don't trust, whether it's earned or not earned, they don't trust the governing structure of East Cleveland. They don't trust that if they put their money into East Cleveland, that it will be a return. So how do you help get that? Well, you got to bring credible partners with you to the table. You're not going to get it by yourself. And recalling folks, even though you're mad at them, with 1 year left in their term, ain't helping. Now, we get mad at each other at City Hall, but we let them go there 4 years unless they truly, or unless you got some conspiracy like they tried to do against Dennis and he still won that. I'm trying to explain to East Cleveland. I think Frank Jackson and the City Hall should have come and opened the doors to have a conversation about partnership before annexation. They did not do that.
I'm just going to, just for a quick second, but indeed, prior to the recall, the mayor's administration were in conversations, those types of conversations. They were in conversations with looking at their finances and looking
That was
at
after the,
no.
That was after the petition.
No, it was after the petition, but yeah, but they're not going to step in.
Well, now hold on a second.
Yeah, but
Now, you
I don't want this to turn into a
defensive
debate
No, I'm
here.
not getting defensive.
Nobody had an interest in East Cleveland until East Cleveland brought the petition. They didn't want to care about them. They didn't have no interest. You as president, the mayor as mayor, left that to deteriorate. I know why, because I'm the one next door to it. So all I know is that the petition brought the issue. Now, the question is, throw out the petition. Is this council president and is that mayor in 2017 willing to put its political capital on behalf of East Cleveland and Columbus without annexation being on the table? The answer is no.
Okay, now certainly
The answer is no.
Certainly the conversations began after the petition, as they should have.
No, they shouldn't.
No, they should have, because
Kevin,
when
no.
am I allowed to talk? Do you want to hear? You go ahead.
No, it's a
Here,
debate.
let's
go ahead.
give
Go ahead.
Kevin Kelley a second to answer this question, then I want to change gears.
Okay,
But I want you to tell the truth.
Okay, look.
Now, you don't put us up here. This is
Listen.
what y'all getting. There is a tension in City Hall about East Cleveland, in Cleveland City Hall. I just need y'all to feel that. It is who is responsible for your brother.
Now, Councilman
Who's
Johnson,
responsible
I just
for-
want to give Kevin Kelley an opportunity to respond, and then we'll move on to a different
Well,
issue.
he cut me off.
Okay, it's real simple. It's real simple. We can yell and we can scream, we can talk over each other, but the bottom line is, it's been too many references to the fact that the administration, that the city hasn't been involved in this discussion. And
It's my opinion. Now let's go with the questions.
now, if we can,
opinion.
Councilman, I'm speaking, and I don't know if you're aware of that, but generally when somebody's speaking, you let them complete, and you might want to ask the moderator if you can cut in. All right.
All right, well,
Getting back to the issue at hand is when Mayor Norton was in office in East Cleveland, the city halls were very much engaged in looking at books, looking at liabilities, looking at the capital issues. Now, again, there's been a very intentional step to not create a perception that Cleveland's taking over, because we're very sensitive to, to the mood and what the people in East Cleveland think. So we were taking our cues from East Cleveland, as we should have, and that's what we were doing. Nobody wanted to create a situation that there's any kind of takeover, but we were absolutely involved in conversations with the mayor, with the former council president, in terms of what are we going to do moving forward? What is the plan?
Okay, so I want to change gears now, and I want to put a different audience question here to Councilman Nathaniel Martin. This is about community development block grants. This question says, in the early 1990s, East Cleveland received a separate community development block grant allocation of $3 million. Does East Cleveland still receive these funds, these CDBG funds? I believe the answer is yes, they do. But would these funds go to Cleveland if they merged, is the question.
It's a possibility if we merge, yes, everything would come under Cleveland. But I wanted to go back, and then I'll come back to this. I want to go back to this conversation between Jeff and Kevin and say that the Fiscal Commission, the State Fiscal Commission, the state auditor has been in East Cleveland for about 3 years now, and they oversee every dime that's spent. So there's been some waste going on over the years and some mismanagement, but that doesn't take place. What I've said to, she's no longer the chairperson, Susan Hanrahan, is that I want them to stay till we're solid, till we get what we need in terms of controlling our spending, not wasting money, not hiring folks and all like that. We're in favor of that. Right now, they're still there, okay? It's a balance of Republicans and Democrats that's on that commission. They oversee every dime we spend. That is the type of direction that we're receptive to. I would like for the State Fiscal Commission, appointed by the governor, to stay there till we get it right. We're down to 2.4 now from the last document I saw the other day, million from 5 million, which is not a lot of money. So let's see if we can move in that direction. We can do that. Partnership, collaboration, cooperation, humility, working together, that's what it's going to take. When I had a forum, a couple of forums, Chris Renee attended the forum. He spoke at the forum. We had experts on this whole situation. So it's not like if we were a situation where we were $2-3 billion in trouble, we would have an issue, but we're down to 2.4 million and closing, and we've cut back. So if we can have these partnerships, if we can sit down with these corporate people that you never see that's behind it to say we here that the land that we have, especially between Lakeview and Superior going east, is valuable. We can start the economic development that we need if we can connect with these entities that do housing rehab and all like that. Some houses need to be torn down, but some of that housing stock is fantastic and needs to be renovated. So, but these things take time and it takes cooperation. That is, when all is said and done, if we can get these entities to do that, we can solve this situation in 2-3 years.
Councilman Kelley, I want to put this question to you from the audience. If there were a merger, would East Cleveland become a Cleveland city ward, and how would the people of East Cleveland be represented?
All to be determined. If indeed it went to that, which is, again, far down the line, we would have to redraw. It couldn't just be a neighborhood, because the population doesn't support the ward's size that we have.
A ward is about 28,000 people, I think?
No, it's about 23.5.
23.5, okay.
23.5.
And East Cleveland is 17,000 people.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So it couldn't be a ward. However, I've been told, and this is these are different possibilities, that for a period of time, if it were in the annexation agreement, the merger agreement, that courts are very respectful of those. So if it was for a short period of time, but ultimately, because of the difference in population, the one man, one vote, principle of law would, you can't have more representation for a certain area than other areas.
Mm-hmm. Would you have to add a second representative so you have an odd number?
Probably not at 17,000 people.
Yeah.
We would need closer to about 50,000 to add another
Uh-huh.
You got to get to 425.
And then we would add 2.
Right.
Right.
Just for folks to understand, the equation is that if City of Cleveland's population hit 425, it can go up to 19 council people. But the addition of East Cleveland does not get us, we're about 398 or something right now. So just FYI. So this is not in a, so the options are endless. They could chop you up 5 ways. They could make the city, I mean, you're 3 square miles. So they can make you all in one ward and connect you to and add part of my ward existing, the Euclid Park. They can put Euclid Park with East Cleveland and create a ward. They could go in Glenville over there by Superior and make a ward. So it's all about the whole discussion under the annex process where they create a plan and then they present that plan for your voters and then it comes to City Council of Cleveland. So that's where the give and take will happen. What's in the best interest? Some would argue that it's good to have East Cleveland with 2 council people fighting for you at 601 Lakeside. Glenville has 3 council people that represents Glenville, and all 3 of us fight for Glenville. Then there's an argument, well, we all want to stay together and be called the East Cleveland neighborhood, and you'll have 1 council. So those are all valued discussions, the debates should ever get to that point.
This is a question for Councilman Nathaniel Martin. A question from the audience, and forgive me if I misread some of this here. How can East Cleveland continue to, I believe, reduce its budget without? Well, essentially, I think the question is getting at, will the citizens of East Cleveland be left with any services if East Cleveland has to continue to reduce its budget?
We're providing the basic services. We reach out, like in terms of our streets, ODOT, we reach out to them, and we've got help from Cleveland Heights, even though Cleveland Heights hasn't stepped up to be involved in the annex discussion. So we reach out. We're scratching by. However, this is a key year, 2017. I need to share this with the public. We're facing a $1.5 million to $2 million deficit. It may diminish over a few months. So 2018 is going to be the challenging year, okay? Like most cities, half our budget goes to fire and police, okay? In our 3.1 miles, we seem to be able to provide security. We seem to be able to do the cleaning. We can do better. We can do more. But we have enough to get by. And the perception of crime, our crime is not as bad as a lot of people think it is. I walk the streets all the time, okay? The county prosecutor meets in our city once a month. There's a couple of citizens here that are part of that, and we get the crime statistics all the time. So we're scratching by, but we want to thrive, not to survive. That's why we need to have these conversations, and we need to move to the next step. And I think with these 2 intelligent people on my left and my right, and the rest of the councils, that we can reach some common ground. That's my hope.
Well, I want to push you a little bit on that question,
Okay.
just because, I mean, the city of East Cleveland, since 2013, has cut its general fund budget by 26%. I know the state, as part of the financial recovery plan East Cleveland signed on to, is going to be asking for more cuts to the budget, which is going to mean more layoffs, likely. How can the city continue to provide a good level of service to folks as you're also trying to, under pressure from the state, whittle down your budget even more?
It's going to be tough. If you take in consideration what I just said about the 1.5 million, 2 million, we've reached out for a lot of help. We need to increase the tax revenue that's diminished over there to 20 years. It's going to be tough. But we need help. And it's going to take more than $10 million. We need help from the state, which has not said they're doing anything, but they're monitoring our spending. That needs to stay in place. But we need other entities to step in and help us. That's the common sense thing to do. If we have properties that are sitting vacant that are rehabable, if you use that terminology, or can be renovated, we need programs to come in to get them so people can move in. We can give people a good deal and they start paying taxes. We, about 10 years ago, we came up with $100 million. The city of East Cleveland kicked in $10 million, and the state kicked in $90 million. We have basically all new schools in East Cleveland. So we have some good things going on, okay? Again, and I hope not to be redundant, but at Windermere and Superior, you can get on a rapid, go anywhere in the world. We have gyms that a lot of cities don't have. And we have people that love the city. They love the fact that I talk to my constituents on a regular basis. They see me on the street. They can come up to City Hall and see the mayor. We don't have the bigness that Cleveland has. So if we call ourselves neighbor, Jeff is my neighbor, Kevin is my neighbor, we have to help each other. That's what it's going to take.
I want to put one more question to you here from the audience. It says, and then we're talking about, the problems of the fiscal situation. This question from the audience is, how is losing the sovereignty of the city of East Cleveland, how would that solve the problem? I imagine they're asking, is that something that, it sounds like the audience member might not want to give that up, and they're saying, how is that solving the problem?
Well, I don't know if it's solving the problem or not. The people don't want to lose the sovereignty. I can say that based on a lot of people I talk to. The poor and the well-to-do, whatever the case may be. We like the autonomy. We like there's pluses with the smallness of East Cleveland. We feel that we will lose that under Cleveland. We don't want to be relegated to a little, connected to a ward. And I know the council people in Cleveland have been struggling to get money in their wards. They spend a lot of money on the Republican convention. All those conversations take place. But we don't want to be just our 17,000 absorbed, and we don't really see an impact. That's what we're concerned about.
Councilman Kelley, this question from the audience says, where would the money come from to renovate these houses? We were talking earlier about how do you deal with vacant and abandoned properties or dilapidated properties. Where would the money come from to be able to renovate some of those homes?
I don't know. There's no fund that's readily available, and there's nobody that's offering that type of money. Those are all the types of things. There are a host of renovation programs that are available, but it's not enough to meet the need. And many of the programs that are available for home renovation are low interest loan programs. The problem is that the applicants have to be bankable to a certain level, and even if you're looking at a $20,000, $40,000 rehab to bring a house up to new standard, 10-20% of that is more than most people have in their bank account. So there's no easy fix. There's no fund where people are offering this money, although there are, like I say, there are a host of programs. Cleveland Restoration Society has a host. The county has their help loan. I could rattle off a bunch of them. The city's Department of Aging has a bunch. But it's a hodgepodge of programs. It is a big, expensive problem. If I knew where the money was going to come from, I would have already gotten it. So.
Councilman Jeff Johnson, I want to put the same question to you about, where do you propose finding the money to be able to renovate houses in East Cleveland, or all across the city of Cleveland, really, because this problem is not unique just to East Cleveland.
Let me share with you what I advocate. First of all, the first problem, the reality is that the city of Cleveland is not going to give money from its bonds, not even legally able to do that. It's not going to give any money out of its general fund. We just persuaded our residents to vote for an income tax increase so that it can deal with our shrinking base, because we also got hit by the Kasich budget of losing tens of millions of dollars because he's doing these tax breaks because he thought he was going to be president of the United States. So he laid his foundation and got trumped. So, and so we paid that price. So the money, basically what we're talking about is a bailout, because we cannot just write a check next door. Cleveland Heights is not going to write a check. So when Nate keeps saying that we need to have folks with us, basically you need a bailout. You need to be able to say, this city is so important, like any other city in the state of Ohio, that the state of Ohio needs to step up, because it's a municipality within the state of Ohio. And it needs to step up with a bailout plan with conditions and requirements that the governance sector has to do, from creating cooperation within your own council and mayor to agreeing that steps will be taken. Federal or state monies is about the only way we can get East Cleveland to a point where it's paying for its infrastructure needs. And then when you do that, you then create an environment through your agreement with hitting certain points on a requirement list and with your partnership. I go back to the same point. I absolutely admit that we have failed, the city of Cleveland has failed to be the partner that's necessary to negotiate a bailout plan for East Cleveland. I'm not giving money out of our pocket, but using our power and our influence in our relationships to say we are a weaker city if East Cleveland continues the way it is. Until Cleveland believes that, which right now I question, they're not going to do what's necessary. Now, the University Circle's interest is not enough to drive this relationship. It is about me as a human being looking at 17,000 folks over there who are concerned about whether the police show up. At the same time, while I'm fighting for police in my ward, because we're going through our issues about where investment is or is not. So I'm simply saying to you, Nick, one of the takeaways here is the fundamental question: has Cleveland City Hall done enough to be a good neighbor? And until we walk, not because you initiated by knocking on our door and giving us a petition, but because it is the right thing to do and we have an interest in the sustainability of East Cleveland. East Cleveland is the very first suburb in the history of Cleveland. It was the very first in 1911. All the rest showed up, Cleveland Heights and all that showed up later. East Cleveland has an intimate relationship with Cleveland that somewhere along the line we need to acknowledge, and then we need to walk together, and I need to say to my brother, okay, I'm gonna help you with this project, but y'all gotta act better than what y'all doing. That's what I would tell him. I said, you gotta stop acting up if you want us to get you $100 million.
Councilman Martin, I want to ask you a question here that I think is a good specific example of some of the stuff we're talking about.
Before you ask that, Nick, I want to say this about and I want the people to hear this about the imbalance in terms of, we talked about renovation, and it's a profound, good question. But the amazing thing over the last 4 years, we've get millions of dollars to demolish. We talked about the Kyle County Land Bank. Well, they demolished the property, so it's waiting for the developers to come in and build. It's an imbalance there. Well, how can we get $5, $6, $10 million to tear something down? We can't get anything to renovate. That's an imbalance there. Okay, so we tear it down. We got, if you go down Euclid, you can see where we have the vacant land. All the developers got to come do and do development. There's something wrong with that picture. Why is it not enough money to renovate? Everything, you can't tear everything down. It doesn't make sense. So we need that. That's the kind of help we need, okay? We reached out to the I don't want to live next to a vacant house, and you don't want to live next to a vacant house, okay? But I don't want to see magnificent structures torn down because there's money to tear them down. There's got to be a balance there, okay?
And that brings me to my next question. As a lot of those houses get torn down, where the pieces and parts have ended up is in a big dump on Noble Road. And this is, I think, an example of, as we're talking about how does East Cleveland manage all of these issues with, the fiscal situation. The city sold off that land to make some money as part of its financial recovery plan. What moved in was a company that piled high this giant pile of debris. For folks who have been following this story or not, the former mayor of East Cleveland, Eric Brewer, brought in a guy who did an environmental testing. This person claims that there's evidence of harmful gases there. My question for you is, now you got this giant pile of stuff that neighbors don't want to see right next to their backyard. How do you propose that this stuff gets cleaned up, and who's going to pay for it?
Well, we're going to need some federal help. You know, it's ironic that you brought that up because we've had the Ohio EPA, the feds, we talked to Congresswoman. We've done everything possible in the last 2 years to get something done. I commend Eric, but it was a lot of other. We've had protests, etc. We've done everything possible, and every time we do it, they say that this guy meets the standards. Just recently, if you read the paper like I do, something's happening with the gases. It's crazy. It makes you think that somebody's getting paid. Now, we've been dealing with this thing for 2 years. We contacted our congressman. We contacted Ohio EPA. We had everybody come out. And he was never cited for anything. Just now. Why now? But we're not knocking that, but we've been trying to get that taken care of. We get things before us like any council and reread them, okay? And this was recommended by the administration. They push it and push it and push it. So what we read was put before us was rocks and stones. We had no idea this thing would be the way it is, and we're totally opposed to it.
Well,
we
now,
want it out of there.
And now that it's here and the EPA has said that it needs to close, who do you think should be responsible for cleaning it up, and who should pay for it?
Well, I think that the state needs to help us. I think the feds need to help us. We don't have the money to clean it up. Any other suggestion I'm open to. But we need to get that dump out of there as soon as we can. Okay?
I got another question here from our audience. I want to put it to Councilman Kevin Kelley. Is there a role for the foundations in planning and mediating this East Cleveland situation? Is there a role that foundations can or should be playing in this whole process?
Yes, there's a role for everybody who has an interest in this. This is a situation of great regional interest. We all talk about regionalism if it's something that's going to save the world, but here's an opportunity. You've got a community that's struggling, and there's different solutions been proposed, but there's got to be. We throw numbers around, but we haven't really done any kind of planning. We don't know what the real number is for the capital, for the infrastructure. We don't know whether the recent judgments that East Cleveland's experienced are going to be won on appeal or if they're dischargeable in bankruptcy. We just don't know this. The foundations or whomever could certainly play a role in terms of putting together studies, planning what needs to happen to help East Cleveland, and if one of those suggestions is a merger, that's one of them. But let's look at everything. Let's look at all of the issues that are facing East Cleveland, and we need to start there before we start. We've talked a lot about going to the state. We've talked a lot about where we're going to get the money for all these vacant houses. We've talked about a lot of things, but we need to start with some basic planning and really understanding what the issue is, because I don't think we fully understand exactly what the needs are and what they will cost and what the solution is.
Councilman Kelley, I want to put this question.
Ken, if I can just jump in here.
Sure, about the foundations.
About the foundations.
What role do you think they should play?
We agreed. We've been in contact with Buckley and King, and we've been trying to work with.
That's a law firm.
That's a law firm, to get the foundations to do a feasibility study, and we think that's going to happen maybe this year. So we're moving in that area, and that's I think one of the foundations names came up with the Cleveland Foundation. You got the Gunn Foundation, you got other foundations, but we're moving in that area. Because that would be step one, to have a feasibility study to see what our options are and what direction we need to go. I'm totally in favor of that, and I can say our council people are in favor of it too.
Councilman Kelley, I want to put this question to you. It's one that I get all the time when I talk about East Cleveland or cover East Cleveland. The question is, with Cleveland's declining population, now well under 400,000, would the increase of 17,000 population from East Cleveland help Cleveland secure any more federal funding?
Not really. I've heard that too, that somehow by doing this, we're suddenly going to be eligible for a bunch of funds. The federal grants, the state, everything, and when I look at how we fund our Department of Health, the Homeland Security grants, going from 390 to 407 is not going to do that. We need to, if this is a path we want to pursue, we have to do it for other reasons, and we have to look at what are the assets of each community and can they be better together, or can we be better with some other partnership, maybe some shared services. I don't know. So the short answer is no, but at the same time, to look at the possibilities. Cities don't have opportunities to expand their footprint like this very often. This is an historical, situation. It's a very unique point in history. But again, I think we need to figure out, what are we doing here? What is the path forward? First of all, let's identify all the issues that are before us, and let's put a cost to them, and then let's try to develop some sort of plan forward and let the people of East Cleveland decide.
For Councilman Nathaniel Martin, currently, this is another question from the audience. Currently, East Cleveland owns hundreds of acres of land in its land bank. What will happen to this land if the merger goes through?
Well, we have a lot of land in the land bank, and we have citizens that contact the land bank to try to get property. If it's in a land bank, it's bankable. So we're hoping that not only East Cleveland, but anyone who want to get the land right now, I can tell you from what I've seen going on with the land bank, it's some deals that's off the hook, to use that terminology. There's good properties, and certain people are getting that property out of East Cleveland, out of the land bank. Okay, so get in the game, I would say. All right, we won't deny you. If it's on that list, reach out and try to get it. All right.
Councilman Jeff Johnson, this is another question from the audience. What can City Council do to support community development and service delivery in East Cleveland? They say, as an example, code enforcement, residential stabilization, rehab, demo, home repair, et cetera.
City Council cannot do anything directly with any of that because it's another charter city. I mean, there's that wall that there's nothing official that I can do to assist with code enforcement across the street in East Cleveland, and I'm on the other side of the street, because we're not allowed to send unless there's an agreement, a shared services agreement. So one of the things could be, and Kevin mentioned it, in the course of an official relationship, we could talk about shared services. However, on this particular case of housing, one of our worst services is building housing. So we still got to fix that before we can help anybody else with it. And there's no exception to the reality of building housing. Downtown, that housing is different than the neighborhood where the real problems are at. But there is the option, again, of us being able to sit as part of our relationship. Let me just make sure I understand. There is absolutely no official relationship that is occurring right now. The council president has initiated studying the issue, but there's not official, because we don't have three. The annex process is kind of it's not moving. Because it's not going to move, and I'm not advocating that it move unless there is a bailout money. Cleveland is not going to pursue this, and I would never pursue it without money, all right? Because my folks don't want to pursue it without money that ain't coming out of their pocket. It comes out of, well, at least the tax they pay to the state will come out of their pocket, and the state gives us the money back. So there is right now a ability for us, theoretically, to talk about fire services, to talk about police, where at least on the edges of where we share. But it does require, again, that it has to come from money outside of our existing budget, because we are struggling right now, even though we've got $80 million extra because of this tax increase. We're stabilizing our services. But there is an ability for us to ultimately talk about shared service, but it has to come from us all sitting down, representatives of both cities, if we want to go the path of non-annexation, and then talking about how to go get money to assist with shared services. Because again, the assumption is that Nate and the Mayor King and the rest of them cannot go by themselves and get the necessary money to be able to pay for more police, because they're tax base. Now we had to also make sure, like for example, GE is okay. Make sure that GE are they going to stay? Last thing East Cleveland needs is GE to finally give up on the lighting section. I mean, and if GE is shaky right now, they need to come to us and say, we need you to stay. And this is why we can help to do that. I mean, that's the kind of partnership. They have to keep the base they have economically, and figure out how to enhance their base if we go the non-annexation route.
For Councilman Kelley, this question from the audience says, and it kind of bounces off that one about, talking about sharing services, would there be economy of scale savings for combining safety services, this says EMS, fire, and police?
Perhaps. We don't know. I mean, that's something we need to figure out. I mean, it seems intuitive that it may be, since we have certain infrastructure, but we just don't know. And when we talk about shared services or the previous question, right now the way that the things are, Cleveland can't give away its assets, and we can't provide services for free unless there's some public purpose to the city of Cleveland. So if that were to happen, there would have to be a payment, but we would have to really take a look at, whether it's waste collection, whether it's, safety forces, whether, name the service. We don't know. That would seem to be the only reason that you would do it. And, just recently, I believe East Cleveland went from a master meter community to the water, individual water accounts, and that's gone pretty well, I would say, by all accounts. So we don't know. Very likely, or I should say likely.
I had another question for you. We're talking now about, of course, this idea of an annexation of East Cleveland. We talk about Cleveland taking on communities that are in financial trouble. Are we ever going to talk about Cleveland taking on communities that are doing pretty well, annexing Bay Village or Parma or Gates Mills?
I don't see that. I don't see that happening. Just recently there was a proposed merger of 4 more prosperous East Side suburbs, and it just didn't go anywhere. And I think largely because it didn't have to. All those communities could support themselves. We are having this conversation because there's a need. There's that East Cleveland has certain financial needs and certain capital needs and certain infrastructure needs that those other communities you mentioned didn't. So unless one of those communities were to approach City of Cleveland with a request, and it made imminent sense to do that, but that hasn't happened yet.
Nathaniel Martin, do you want to take a stab at that too? I mean, is that an idea that you would get behind, the idea of even more prosperous cities kind of coming on board so that the wealth is shared among them?
I welcome it.
Jeff Johnson, yeah.
You guys, this is the reality is that in Cuyahoga County, we are 59 municipality, villages, and townships. We develop differently than Columbus. Columbus used its water to pretty much threaten, and you can be separate, but you just won't have no water. So they develop differently. In Cleveland, they all popped up. There has been a significant, over the time, significant discussion about the cooperation, but nobody really wants to give up their governance. So we're moving in this whole area of shared governance, shared services. And the only reason why, and no one came, until the problems of East Cleveland financially, no one came to East Cleveland and said, we want to take you over. No one ever told you that. So when it came down to it, this is a reaction to how do we best help a city that's, if not bankrupt, near bankruptcy. And that's what the debate here is. And just this whole idea, why don't we take over Bay Village? Because Bay Village ain't bankrupt. Bay Village ain't got no fiscal problem. Bay Village don't want to be a part of us because we're a majority black city. No, that's my opinion. Yeah, Bay Village don't want to be part of us because Bay Village is doing fine. And when it's all said and done, East Cleveland don't want to be part of Cleveland if it can stabilize, because it's all about wanting to be able to have this proud history of legacy. And John D. Rockefeller, and it's one of the most historic, beautiful cities in the freaking nation. Do you realize that there's 18 mansions that remain of Millionaire's Row in East Cleveland? If you understand the historic nature of that, that's why I am so appreciative and want to be a part of saving this city, whether it's a neighborhood or a city, because I'm a big historic preservation. And I think we lose so much as a region if we lose this area to demolition, for example, or blight, or neglect. And even though someone on the west side of Cleveland don't feel that, understand that, I know that. It is a significantly powerful, important city that must be saved, and it should not have to be initiated by because someone's knocking on the door and say, take us over. We should have recognized that a long time ago and start working together. When you first had the first fiscal problems, we should have been able to say, we're going to do what's necessary. Then we all got hit by the housing crisis. That set us all back with the housing. Because Glenville's the same way. We have historic, beautiful homes in Glenville, and we have the same debate that he sounded like me, demolition versus rehabilitation. Same speech I'm doing in Glenville.
Well, we're going to have to leave it at that. I want to thank you, our panelists, for being here. Nathaniel Martin, do you want to have the last word? If you can do it in 30 seconds.
We need to respect each other, respect the difference of opinion, agree to disagree, respect each other, men, women, brothers and sisters. Look out for our neighbors. We're neighbors. Let the egos get away. We have a shared humanity. We need each other. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our panelists. Appreciate your being here and sharing all these questions with us, too.